Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjanaya Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjanaya Jamuna Tira Hariya Jamuna Tira Hariya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Hariya Yamuna Tira Hariya Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bom Hey Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Nitai Gaur. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur. Hey. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur, Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Premanande, Hari 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 Bol. Om Gyan Timidandasya Gena Jana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya De Satarine Pancha Kalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Behevacha Patitanam Bhavane Bhyo Vaishnave Bhyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today is the disappearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. But we'll begin by reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, first verse in the chapter. Prahlad pacifies Lord Nrsingadev with prayers. Shri Narada Uvacha Evam Suradaya Sarve Brahma Rudra Pura Saraha No Paitum Asakam Manyu Samrabham Surdurasadam. Sri Narada Uvacha Evam Suradaya Sarve Brahma Rudra Punasaraha No Paitum Aksakam Manyu Samrabham Surarasadam. Chant. Anyone else? Sri Narada Uvacha, the great saintly sage Narada Muni said, Evam, thus, Sura Adaya, the groups of demigods, Sarve, all, Brahma Rudra Purna Saraha, represented by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Na, not upaitum, to go before the Lord. Asakan, able. Manu sarambam, in a completely angry mood. Sudarsasadam, very difficult to approach. Lord Nrsingadev. Translation. The great sage Narada Muni continued, the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other great demigods dared not come before the Lord, who at that time was extremely angry. So now he has just killed the demon Hiranyakashipu, and he's quite angry. Very angry, and no one can approach him. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung in his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Krodha Bhakti Dvesha Jane. Anger should be used to punish a demon who is envious of devotees. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaya, lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and envy all have their proper use for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotee. A devotee of the Lord cannot tolerate blaspheming of the Lord or other devotees, and the Lord also cannot tolerate blasphemy of a devotee. Thus, Lord Nrsingadev was so very angry that the great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and even the goddess of fortune, who was the Lord's constant companion, could not pacify him, even after offering prayers of glorification and prayers. No one was able to pacify the Lord in his anger, but because the Lord was willing to exhibit his affection for Prahlad Maharaj, all the demigods and the others present before the Lord pushed Prahlad Maharaj forward to pacify him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, yeah. So when the Lord comes out of the pillar, he's stanu. Stanu means he's completely fierce. There are 9 manifestations of Lord Nrsingadev, from very fierce, stanu, Nrsinga, when he comes out of the pillar, all he sees is one thing, Hiranyakashipu, that's all. And he is full of anger. Why is he angry? Because he has tried to kill his pure devotee. The Lord is very inclined, very strongly inclined, to give protection to his devotees. And the love between the devotee and the Lord is very sweet and intimate. The Lord loves the devotee loves the Lord. And the Lord will do whatever he can to give protection to his devotee when the devotee needs that protection. And so, in this particular narration here, Lord Nrsingadev has just killed him, and he's also killed thousands and thousands of Hiranyakashipu's followers who were also attacking the Lord. And the Lord was just dispatching them one after another to the abode of Yamaraj. But he's still very ferociously angry. The demigods are there, Lakshmi's there, even Prahlad is there, Brahma is there. Brahma is the chief of the demigods. And the demigods are offering prayers. And Brahma at one point says to Lakshmi, Lakshmi Devi, this is your husband. Go pacify him. She says, I don't recognize him as my husband in this particular form. Anyway, even if he was, I'm not going. Basically, that's what she was saying. So no one could go, but then Brahma turned to Prahlad, and then Prahlad. Immediately, with a garland in his hand, you can see the picture, the devotees have made that into a portrait of Prahlad standing there with the garland and pacifying, as Prabhupada said, the killer of his father. He loved his father, but still, he understood that his father got what he needed to get, and that is the mercy of the Lord. And when Lord Nrsingadev looked and saw Prahlad, his anger dissipated, and he became very peaceful. At that time, Prahlad Maharaj came, and the Lord sat him upon his lap. And there's a beautiful exchange between the Lord and Prahlad. Prahlad, the Lord is so, you might say, indebted to his devotee that he didn't deviate even a slight bit when he was being killed. I mean, his life was at stake, but still, he wasn't going to give up his love for the Lord for anything, even at the cause of his own death. But of course, Rake Krishna More Ke, More Krishna Rake Ke, that when Krishna wants to protect, no one can harm, and if Krishna decides not to protect, no one can protect. So in this case, there was a beautiful exchange, and the Lord wanted to give, and he asked Prahlad, please, you have shown your love for me. Please take some benediction. Prahlad said, I'm not a vanik. I'm not a merchant. I don't worship you for something. I worship you because I love you. And so Prahlad couldn't even consider taking any kind of benediction. But the Lord was so insistent. And Prahlad finally responded and said, please give liberation to my father. Give your mercy to my father. And the Lord said, that's already happened. As soon as he was killed by the nails of the Lord, he actually attained liberation. So then the Lord was still persistent, asked for something. And Prahlad Maharaj became a little bit bewildered. The Lord wasn't going to leave him alone until he asked for a benediction. That was the Lord's mood. He wanted to give something to Prahlad, although Prahlad didn't want anything but service to the Lord. But finally, Prahlad said, all right, actually, just let me stay in this material world and be an instrument for your mercy for all of these fools and rascals who have made a humbug civilization. And let me become your mercy instrument to bring them back to your lotus feet. When the Lord heard that, the Lord practically cried in love for Prahlad. He was so overwhelmed by Prahlad's compassion that he was willing to stay in this material world and preach, and he actually did. He became a great preacher and liberated so many persons. He actually became a grihasta, got married. His son was Virochana, and Virochana's son was Bali Maharaj, the great Bali Maharaj. So Prahlad did wonderful service after that incident. So the point here is that a devotee doesn't really ask anything from the Lord but service. Srila Prabhupada made that point in his own life when he was talking about himself. And he said, I never asked my spiritual master anything, but only one question: how can I serve you? And then, of course, that evolved, or we say, came into Prabhupada's getting the instructions along with many of his other god brothers, to go to the West and preach Krishna consciousness. And many went and came back with hardly any results. But Srila Prabhupada was successful, and because of that, there is a worldwide movement of spirituality in worshipping Lord Krishna, who was hardly ever worshipped outside of India. And now it's worldwide, practically every country of the world. And people are taking to Krishna consciousness, becoming happy and free from their anxiety of their struggles in material life. So that was Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, and it's interesting because Prabhupada's one of his favorite pastimes was Prahlad. One of his favorite pastimes for Prahlad. If you go through the 1977 lectures that Prabhupada did, and this was the last year when Prabhupada was with us, many times, most of the times, he spoke on the 7th canto of Prahlad Maharaj. In fact, he spoke on Prahlad Maharaj 3 different occasions throughout his time with us, just to show the glories of this 5-year-old boy who was a pure devotee, who had given up everything just to show his love for the Lord, even at the risk of his life. So Prabhupada really had some deep affection, and in fact, one time when he was talking about Prahlad, Prabhupada started crying. Crying in happiness, just hearing about the glories of Prahlad Maharaj. So this section is very wonderful. So today is also the disappearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, one of the great Vaishnava acharyas, who was very much connected to our Krishna conscious process, as he did 2 things that we very much perform regularly. He revolutionized kirtan. He developed a style of kirtan. Some people say, and it is actually a fact, the Manipuri style of kirtan, which was brought in by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And also, he's famous for his bhajans. Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We regularly glorify the Lord and sing these wonderful bhajans, which are so deep in transcendental devotional principles. Srila Prabhupada would say that Narottam Das Thakur's bhajans are pure Shastra. The conclusion of the Shastras are found within his bhajans. Not only their expressions of devotions, but he has aligned those expressions with the essence of the spiritual teachings which are found in our Shastras. Narottam Das Thakur was a Manjari. His name was Champak Manjari. And Narottam is explained in many of the books. One is called Bhakti Ratnakara by Narahari Chakravarti. And of course, Prema Vilas by Nityananda Das. And then also Narottam Vilas is written also. That was also done by Narahari Chakravarti. Narahari Chakravarti was a disciple of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Simple Bengali songs loved by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada would sing them all, especially Hari Hari Vipale Jonama Ainu, Manusana Janma Paya, Radha Krishna Navadiya, Janiya Suniya Pisainu. Prabhupada loved that bhajan. When Jamuna, Prabhupada's one of his leading female disciples, said, Srila Prabhupada, what is your favorite bhajan? Prabhupada said, Hari Hari Vipale. He actually answered right away. And this is by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. The narration goes that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were walking towards Vrindavan. But then Lord Chaitanya took a detour in another direction, and he went to the area of Kechari Gram. as he was getting into the area of catering garam, Lord Chaitanya started to go into ecstasy. And he started to call out with great, great devotion and great, great love. Narottam, Narottam, Narottam. Now Nityananda had heard him say that before, but he never said anything. This time Nityananda said to him, "Who is this Narottam? We don't know anybody like this. Who is he? Why are you calling?" And the Lord said, "Very soon a great personality will appear in this world, and he will be very dear to my heart because he will revolutionize kirtan, because kirtan is my heart. Kirtan is my heart." And then they continued to walk. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was deep in thinking about this personality who will soon appear. And they came to one river in that area, which was called the Padma River. And Lord Chaitanya decided to take bath in the Padma River. So when he entered into the river, something happened. The river started to become very agitated, almost like waves in the river. And the river kept churning and churning and churning. And then it is explained that the personification of the Padma River, she came, and the Lord spoke to her. He said, "Soon a great personality will appear, and he will come to bathe in your river also." And she says, "How will I know who it is?" "Your river will have the same reaction as if I had entered the river. And I want you to do one thing. I want you to give him this prema, because I'm leaving my Krishna prema in this river. So when he comes, you give him that Krishna prema." Interesting. And so that was in the year 1534. That was just at the last year just before Lord Chaitanya disappeared. And then when Lord Chaitanya disappeared, it was just the next year that Srila Narottam Thakur was born in a place called Khetri Gram. His father was Krishna Nanda Dutt. His mother was Narayani. He had a brother named Purushottam Dutt. And he was born on a full moon with all auspicious signs. And then they had a name-giving ceremony, and the astrologer said, "This devotee, this personality who was born in your family will become a great devotee of the Lord." Then, as is customary within Vaishnava culture, there is the samskars. So it was time for the grain giving ceremony, where the child eats its first grains. Usually for the boy, it can be done up to the 7th month, between the 5th and the 7th, the 6th month, and for the girl up to the 7th month. And so, being a king, Krishnananda Dutt, he had a small little area where he was ruling his province. So he had influence. So he invited so many people, sages, other personalities who came for this name-giving ceremony. It was a great festival. And now the child was going to have the first grains. And so everything was in place. So many people had come for this auspicious event, to bless the event, to see the ceremony. And then it was time to give the child the grains. And so they brought the pot of sweet rice. And of course it's customary that the father, actually the priest, first feeds the baby, and then the father feeds the baby. So when the priest had the sweet rice, he went to offer to Narottam to take it. Narottam turned his head away. And then, of course, there was another effort to give him the grains. Turned his head away, didn't want it. And everybody thought, oh, this is so inauspicious. So inauspicious, the baby is not taking the grains. And his father was thinking, what is this? And he was feeling very unhappy. Many prestigious people, saints and others, had come for this ceremony, and now he's not taking it. But there was one sadhu there. He said, he's not going to eat that because it's not Mahaprasadam. You give him Mahaprasadam. That's all. So then they cooked again, they offered the sweet rice, and then they offered it to the deity. And then they brought it, and when they gave it to Narottam, immediately he took it. Now he was less than 1 year old at that time, and he didn't want anything but Mahaprasad. And it says that his whole life, he only took Mahaprasadam. As he was growing up, living with his father, there was one sage who would come regularly. His name was Krishnadas. And he would speak about the glories of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya's associates to Narottam. And Narottam was just a little boy, and he would love to listen and hear about all of the great personalities and also about Lord Chaitanya. And he would cry. Why would he cry? Because he was thinking, I am so unfortunate. I missed the opportunity. I didn't get that opportunity to associate with Lord Chaitanya and many of his associates. So he was feeling quite unhappy. And this was going on for some time, and he would hear. And then when he heard about one great personality called Srinivasacharya, his mind became very attracted to want to know more and to get an opportunity to someday meet this great personality, Srinivasacharya. So he developed an affection for Srinivasacharya, even though he had never met him. Srinivasacharya was the son of Gangadas Bhattacharya, and of course, Gangadas Bhattacharya later became Chaitanya Das. That's a beautiful story, how when Lord Chaitanya went to Katwa for the hair cutting ceremony for when he took sannyas, Gangadas Bhattacharya came to see the Lord. At that time, him and his wife had no children, and they didn't have any intention to have children either. So they came, and they heard about this great personality, and they wanted to see this hair cutting ceremony. So of course that was the most, you see the pictures of the event that is being drawn, especially by the Gaudiya Math. It's a pitiable ceremony. People are rolling on the ground, crying, smashing their head. They couldn't believe that this beautiful, gorgeous sannyasi who had such beautiful, flowing hair, he looked like Krishna himself, he was now going to cut those hair. The person who did the hair cutting, the barber, he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. But Lord Chaitanya, of course, he said, he somehow or other convinced him that he should do it. And finally he did, and that was the last person he ever gave a haircut to. After that, he became a sweet maker. He gave up his occupation because he was also, while he was cutting, he was also crying. Everybody was crying, the whole place, except Keshava Bharti and Lord Chaitanya. So when Gangadas Bhattacharya saw that, and then he heard the name that was given, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, that was the name given by Keshava Bharati. He kept saying, Chaitanya, 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 over and over. He couldn't stop saying. He came home and his wife, and he told his wife about everything. Chaitanya. So they gave him the name Chaitanya Das. And then him and his wife both went to sleep one night, and they both had a dream. It was the same dream, and the dream was that they should have a child. And when they woke up, they told each other the dream they have, and then they decided to have a child, and that child was Srinivasacharya. So this is the appearance of Srinivasacharya, who was so close to Narottam Das. They were practically inseparable. So at the age of 12, Srila Narottam Das Thakur had a dream, and in the dream, Lord Nityananda appeared to him in the dream and said, "You should leave here and you should go and travel and go to the Padma River and take bath there. And all of your desires for spiritual life will be granted." So the dream was reoccurring. Lord Nityananda kept appearing in the dream. And also Lord Chaitanya also appeared to him in the dream. And the Dvaita also appeared to him. The problem was his father was a little bit worried because he was too Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. That could be a problem sometimes for parents. And they were, his father was a prince, and he also had a lot of influence, and he wanted his son to grow up and follow in his footsteps. And so they used to keep him, just like they did with Raghunath Das Goswami, under guard. Well, one day, his father had to go away on some business, and his mother was there. And he had somehow convinced his mother that he needed to go somewhere, and she somehow or other forgot that she was supposed to keep him there. You might say that was Yoga Nidra. And so she let him go, and then he left. And then he went to the Padma River, and when he got to the Padma River, he took bath there. And as soon as he took bath, the whole river started to churn, just like it did when Lord Chaitanya. And Narottam had a dark complexion, but after taking bath there, the prema that was left by Lord Chaitanya in the river was given to Narottam, and his whole body became golden, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then, of course, after that, there's so much on the life of it. And then he decided to travel. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda started to appear to him and said, "Go to Vrindavan." And so he traveled also on the way to Vrindavan. During that time, one was Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. They had left the planet. When he was on his way to Vrindavan, he heard the news that Rupa and Sanatan Goswami had left the planet. And then when he arrived at that time, there was a great ceremony in honor of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami's disappearance. At that time, he had the opportunity to meet Jiva Goswami, and also Srinivasacharya was there. So he met Srinivasacharya, and Srinivas, Narottam, and one other devotee named Dukhi Krishnadas, who later became Shamananda. Jiva Goswami wanted to do book distribution. They had copies of all of the Goswami's books, but only one copy. And Jiva Goswami wanted more copies being made. But in Vrindavan, there was no facility to do that, so they had to take it to the area of Navadvip to do it. And so Jiva Goswami arranged for a caravan with all of the books, Ujjwala, Nilamani, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, the books by Sanatan Goswami, there's Brihad Bhagavatam Rita. All of that were packed in this huge box, and they were put on a bullock cart, and along with 11 guards, the 3 sadhus traveled to bring those books to Navadvip. While they were traveling, of course, they would stop every night to rest, and the guards would stay awake. But one night, the guards fell asleep, and nobody was watching anything. There was one king, his name was Birhambir, and he was a dacoit. He was a king. Sounds like today's news, something similar. And anyway, he consulted one astrologer. He would always see who's traveling through his kingdom and see if they had some wealth. And then he would send his men to come and attack them, even kill them and steal their wealth. And so he did that, and the astrologer said, yeah, actually there's a great ensemble of personalities coming, and they have a great treasure. So the king became excited, and he told his men to go, but he gave an instruction that he never did before. He said, don't harm anyone, but get that treasure. He never said that before. So that night, all the guards fell asleep. The men of the king came and they stole the box of books. When they woke up in the morning, everybody was shocked and unhappy. The books were stolen. What to do? They were all in anxiety. All of the books of the Goswamis, only one copy of everything. Everything was gone. And everybody was just lamenting. But Srinivasachari, he was thinking, and while he was thinking, he heard a voice. The king has taken the books. And then he understood. So then he made a plan, and he told Narottam, you go to Ketarigram and you preach there. He told, what was his name? Dukhi Krishna Das Shamananda, you go back to Vrindavan, and I will stay here and try to find the books. And after some time, he was wandering. He came to the king's palace, and he knew the king had the books, so he somehow joined the palace entourage. And he was there one day listening to a Bhagavatam class given by one of the sadhus in the area. The king, although he was a dacoit, he still listened to Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. This is what we call transcendental dacoit. So he was listening to this one, and as he was this sadhu was giving the class, Srinivas was there, and he was obviously very openly showing his distaste for the class. He didn't like what he was saying. And the king noted it, and he said, oh, who are you? And he said, oh, you think you know more? Yeah. All right. So you speak. So he did, and then the king was amazed to hear his narration of the Bhagavatam. And the king really developed an attraction for him. He said, you should stay here, be my head minister, and you can take care of my affairs and also speak Bhagavatam regularly. Srinivas said, very nice, but actually I'm on a mission. I'm looking for something. We have lost our great treasure. We had some books, and now they're no longer there. And then he described the books. The king said, I have the books. And then they went, and he showed him the box of books. And the most interesting thing was, when they packed the books, they put the Chaitanya Charitamrita on the bottom, but when he opened the box, it was on the top. So when you have milk and you let it sit, what happens? Cream comes to the top. So the cream of all Vedic literature, Chaitanya Charitamrita, had floated to the top. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami's work. And then, of course, the king gave him back the books, and then Srinivasacharya stayed there, and that king became a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya and made his whole kingdom Vaishnavas. Made his whole kingdom going. The kingdom, his king was Birhambir, and his Vana Vishnupur was the name of the place. It's still there. And everyone, because the king was quite, you might say, influential. If you don't become a Vaishnava, Hare Krishna. Good preaching, huh? Anyway, so yeah, that was his. And of course, back to Narottam Das. Narottam had gone on to Ketarigram, and there's many stories how he traveled. He actually visited Jagannath Puri, met many of the devotees in Jagannath Puri when he arrived. Of course, and when he arrived in Vrindavan, devotees had heard about his appearance, and they also came out. Lokanath Swami also came out to meet him. And of course, we understand, we hear a lot about the one particular story, how Narottam really became attracted to Lokanath Das Goswami. And he wanted to take Lokanath Das Goswami as his spiritual master. And Lokanath Goswami was giving initiation, but when Rupa and Sanatan Goswami disappeared, he stopped taking disciples, and he refused to take any more disciples. But Narottam wanted to take, Diksha from Lokanath Goswami. But Lokanath Goswami refused. He said, "You are a prince. Now who am I? How can I give you initiation?" That was the reason he told him. But Narottam didn't give up. And he studied the life of Lokanath. And then you notice Lokanath would go out into the woods to take care of nature every day, and then he would come back. So Narottam would go after Lokanath would come back, and he would clean that area up and make it look very nice. And when Lokanath would go the next day, it was very, very nice. So this was going on some time, and then Lokanath Goswami was starting to think, well, who's coming? Somebody's coming and fixing this area up every nice, I can notice it. So one day he decided to hide behind a tree to see who was coming. And then when he saw Narottam coming, and with his own hands cleaning up the area, he ran out, fell down. He said, "What are you doing? You're a prince. What are you?" And he was just overwhelmed with what we say. He was incredible. He couldn't believe that he was doing that. And Narottam just told him, "This is the greatest service I could possibly do. This is my greatest happiness." And then just after that, Lord Chaitanya appeared to Lokanath and said, "Give Narottam shelter." And so he obeyed Lord Chaitanya, and that was the only disciple he had taken after the disappearance of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. And of course, then he traveled to Jagannath Puri. He met many of the devotees in Jagannath Puri. Everyone loved Narottam. Narottam was so wonderful, simply by seeing him. In fact, when they would hear he was coming, because many had heard about his glories even before they met him, and then when he would arrive in the area, they would all become happy, without even meeting him. And then they would meet him. And he developed friendship with all of Lord Chaitanya's disciples who are still on the planet, especially Narahari Sakar. He came, he met Narahari Sakar. He fell at the feet of Narahari Sakar. Narahari Hari Gori Chamaradulahya. And Narahari just showed so much affection for Narottam. Narottam was so happy, and he asked for blessings and mercy from Narahari. Narahari said, we will only meet once. You will never see me again. And after that time, Narahari left, and he went back to the spiritual world. Because after the departure of Lord Chaitanya, it was difficult for the devotees to stay. Their hearts were broken. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left. They couldn't see any reason. The only ones who stayed because they felt like they wanted to preach. But even others, they couldn't preach because their hearts were so devastated that now Lord Chaitanya has left. There is no meaning to our existence. And by their own will, many of them left the planet. Now, Narottam, he was traveling, and of course at one point he came to Ekachakra. And when he came to Ekachakra to see the birthplace of Lord Nityananda, he was greeted by this elderly Brahmin who welcomed him. And then he asked this Brahmin, do you stay here? Yes, I know the whole place. I've been here my whole life. Please show me the places of Lord Nityananda's pastimes. So he took him from place to place. And then he was learning about where Lord Nityananda used to bathe in one pond called the Padmavati Kund. And many of the places where Lord Nityananda performed his pastime, his birthplace, the Garbhodask, the place of his birth. And he showed him all these places. And Narottam was so enthralled, just hearing and seeing these places. And at the end, this Brahmin, he changed his form and he became Lord Balaram. And then from Balaram, he became Lord Nityananda. So that Brahmin, that old Brahmin, was actually Lord Nityananda who took that form to guide Narottam Das through all of these holy places of his own pastimes. Of course, when Narottam saw that, he just fell down. He fainted in ecstasy, seeing Lord Nityananda. And of course, after some time, he continued on his journey. And then Lord Chaitanya appeared to him in a dream and said, go to Ketarigram and have a big festival. And that was the first Gaur Purnima festival after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya. That was 50 years later. Lord Chaitanya had disappeared in 1534, and that was 50 years later. So the devotees had decided, the devotees in Jagannath Puri, the devotees in Vrindavan, the devotees in Navadvip, whoever was left in the followers of Lord Chaitanya decided to come together in Ketarigram, and the cousin of Narottam, who was a king, his name was Purushottam Dat, he had inherited that area and he was wealthy. So he emptied out his whole treasury and set up this beautiful, beautiful Pandal program for housing all of the thousands of devotees that came from everywhere in a great festival. Before that time, Lord Chaitanya told Narottam in a dream, carve 6 deities and install them during the festival. And so he did. He carved these deities and then brought them to the festival. And then the first day of the festival was a deity installation of 6 different deities. One of the deities, Lord Chaitanya also told him to retrieve my deity, which is hidden in this one go-down, which is owned by this wealthy merchant. And then in the dream, he directed him towards that. So he went and he came to the merchant and he said, there is something very valuable in your go-down. It's a deity of the Lord. The merchant said, the go-down is full of snakes. It's dangerous. Nobody goes down there. You can't go. But then Narottam, he was thinking, Krishna will protect me. And so he went, and when he went down, as he was going down, all the snakes came out and disappeared, and they left that area for good. He found this deity of Lord Chaitanya, and then along with the other deities, he installed that deity in this festival. Now this festival was one of the highlights of all festivals that we hear. in Vaishnav culture, Vaishnav history. And Narottam was there, and so many devotees who had came. Janavi Devi, the wife of Lord Nityananda, she was the presiding deity of the place, presiding personality. She was helping to organize it, and she was welcoming all the devotees. And so then, after the first day of the deity installation, a kirtan was organized. And Narottam, he had this pair of kartals, and the devotees were there, and there were, I'm not sure, but I think there was about 14 mridanga players, no, 7 mridanga players, and 14 kartal players. And they took garlands, and they garlanded the mridanga players. They actually garlanded the mridangas. And then Narottam, with a small pair of kartals, started very softly and started to glorify the holy name and started to sing so beautifully. And as he was singing, he was in becoming more and more absorbed in the chanting of the holy name, and he started to increase in speed. And gradually, he started to dance. And then the mridangas and the kartals all very organizingly came in. These kartal players were teasing notes out of these kartals that no one had ever heard before. And the mridanga players were playing beats that no one had ever heard before. And it was just an amazing kirtan. And then Narottam started to dance. And everyone else started to sing and dance, and the kirtan went on. And gradually it was building and building, and everyone was singing and dancing and jumping. And at one point, something amazing happened. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, the entire Panchatattva, all of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya that had disappeared appeared in the kirtan. It wasn't a vision. They actually personally appeared and started to dance. And when all of the devotees saw Lord Chaitanya and all of their former associates, what was it? Achyutananda saw his father, Advaita Acharya, and Raghunandana saw his father. What was his name? Raghunandana's father? Sarakeli? What was his first? Huh? Can't remember his name. Mukunda. They saw their fathers, their relatives, all of their associates. They all came back and danced in that kirtan. And you could imagine. You can't imagine. Well, I mean, we have some wonderful kirtans in ISKCON, and I think we are maybe one of the best kirtan groups in the world right now. We're famous for kirtans all over the world, especially in places like Vrindavan and Mayapur and other places. But this kirtan was just, it's not describable. Narahari Chakravarti, in describing this kirtan, he goes into great detail. Rolling on the ground, crying, singing, jumping, screaming. It was like everyone was just so much in ecstasy, and Narottam was simply focused on his chanting. And everybody was dancing and dancing, and Lord Chaitanya was dancing, and went on for a long time, as this described. And at one point, Lord Chaitanya and all of the associates who had appeared, they all simultaneously disappeared. And when that happened, there was great lamentation. Everybody felt so unhappy. So that was the famous kirtan. And of course, Janavi Devi was there. And later, after the devotees performed kirtan, then it was time for prasad. And Janavi Devi had cooked for everyone. She organized the cooking. She was the head cook, and she also had others cooking. and she was directing all of the cooking. And then it was time, and the devotees, thousands of devotees, they sat down, and she, along with the servers, served all of the Vaishnavas. There were 22 servers, it's mentioned, along with her. And then after everyone was served, and they ate so much, because it was so good. It was cooked by the hands of Janavi Devi and her empowered devotees who served so nicely. And everybody was so satisfied and so happy. And then it was time for the servers. So all of the servers sat down, and then Janava, she continued to serve the servers. But Narottam came up to her and said, "You sit down." She was so humble. And she was considered to be the leader of the Vaishnavas at that time. Actually, she was an incarnation of Kalindi, the manifestation of, Revati. Was it Revati and Kalindi were the two consorts of Balaram, who again appeared as consorts of Lord Nityananda. So I think she was Revati. She had come back, and now she was the leader. And someone asked Srila Prabhupada, "Can women become gurus?" Prabhupada said, "We have our Janava." We have our Janava. Prabhupada answered like that. So yeah, and then she served everybody. And that kirtan was, and that whole festival is still glorified today as Narottam Das. Narottam Das, after he continued to preach, I don't know how much time we have. How much time do we have? Should we stop or should we continue? Is it... Should I continue? Yeah? Okay. You're not falling asleep, are you? They usually say that Bhagavatam is the place to catch up on your sleep, right? Anyway, there was, let me see if I can find this particular pastime. Narottam, he became very famous and started to preach. He was born in a Kayastha family, so he wasn't a Brahmana. And so, but still, because of his great devotion, he was given the position of initiation. So he was initiating so many persons. And some of the Brahmins were becoming very upset. Who is this Narottam? He's taken the position of a guru, and he also initiated, what was his name? Ganga Narayan, yeah. Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, yeah. Ganga Narayan Chakravarti was one of the leading Brahmins at that time. So the other Brahmins were mad. They went to the king, and they said to the king, "We have to stop this Narottam. He's just, he's ruining the whole Vedic culture." So the king agreed, so what should we do? Well, they got this one Rup Narayan. He was a pundit. They said, "We'll bring Rup Narayan and we'll go to Narottam, and Rup Narayan will challenge Narottam and defeat him, and then we'll show just, who he actually is." So they made a plan to go, and they were traveling with the king, with some of the Brahmanas, and the word got out that this was happening. So two of Narottam Das Thakur's followers, one was Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, the other one was it's mentioned in this song there. I'm terrible with names. Ramachandra Kaviraj. Ramachandra Kaviraj. They heard, and they were some of the leading disciples of Narottam, that the king, along with the Brahmins, were coming to defeat Narottam. So they decided to go ahead on the same path, and they set up a little shop. One was a betel nut wala, and the other one was a panwala. And they had their little, kutirs there. And so when the king and the Brahmins came, they saw, oh, there's a betel nut wala and a pan. Let's get some betel nut and some pan. So when they went to approach Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and Ramachandra Kaviraj, and they started to speak to him, they started speaking perfect Sanskrit. And they were amazed. These shopkeepers are speaking perfect Sanskrit. Well, who are you? We're disciples of Narottam. So when the king found out that these are the disciples of Narottam, and they're speaking perfect Sanskrit, you're going to go and try to defeat Narottam? Forget it. Actually, these Panwalas and these two disciples said, if you want to debate Narottam, first you have to debate us. And they defeated the Rupa Narayan, and he was devastated. So all he could do was turn around. The king said, this is ridiculous. So he gave up the whole adventure. That's a wonderful story. After some time, of course, as time goes on, Srinivasacharya left the planet, and that was very heartbreaking for Narottam. They were very close. And Kaviraj Goswami also. Ramachandra Kaviraj. Ramachandra Kaviraj and Narottam Das were so close. One time, did I tell this story? Yeah, I think I'll tell it. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't want to offend any householders. Anyway, this is Krishna conscious, and everyone doesn't get offended. So, Ramachandra Kaviraj was there, and he was in a wedding party. They were on a wedding procession. He was about to get married. And Narottam, I think it was Srinivasacharya, was looking. And he said, just see, he's about to put a noose around his neck. That means he was going to get married. And he heard this, and then Ramachandra Kaviraj heard this. And he's thinking, what? And then he saw the person who said it, and he came and started speaking to him. And Srinivas preached to him. And he gave up his whole life, the whole idea, and gave up the marriage and joined Narottam's group. And Srinivas gave him to Narottam. He said, this person is your associate. So they stayed together and said they were like two people in one body. They were so close together. We sing that song every day. What's that last line of the song? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Kora Mohor. What's the last line? What's the last line is? Ramachandra Sangha Mage Narottam Das. So Ramachandra is mentioned in there by Srila Narottam Das. They were so close. So when Ramachandra left the planet, this was even more devastating to Narottam. And after some time, he decided also to leave the planet. So he went into seclusion from some time. And after some time, he left his body. And then they had the ceremony for honoring his departure. So they had his body there, many of his disciples and others. And some persons came who didn't like Narottam. So they started, while the eulogies were going on, glorifying the departed sadhu, they started to speak badly and loud enough for other people to hear. And people were becoming really unhappy. This is so inauspicious. These persons are speaking bad about Narottam, and at the point of his departure, Narottam was laying there on some palanquin, and he had a Brahmin thread on his body. At one point, the Brahmin thread turned into gold, and he sat up, came back to life. When these Brahmins, and of course everyone else saw it, they understood he was a great personality. So they actually offered their prayers and apologies and became one of the associates of Narottam. So Narottam came back and he continued for some time, but then his separation was too much. So he told two of his disciples, I think one of them was Gangadas Narayan, come, I'm going down to the river, and I want you to bathe me with the water of the river. And whatever you do, no matter what you see, don't stop bathing me. So they went into waist deep, and he started pouring Ganga water on Narottam. And as he was touching the body of Narottam with Ganga water, that part of the body would melt and turn into milk, and pretty soon his whole body just dissolved into milk and merged into the Ganges, and he was gone. One of his services, actually his service in the spiritual world, was to cook hot milk for Srimati Radharani. That was one of his services. So actually he merged back into milk, and then he departed. There's so much more on the life of Narottam, how he saved one dacoit from being killed by the king and made him a devotee, and then that dacoit later became a great personality and made all of his associates, who were also dacoits, into Vaishnavas also. The life is not. You should read that book if you get a chance. It's called Narottam Vilas. My god sister, what's her name? The wife of Hari Sari Prabhu, Sutala. Her name is Sitala. I'm sorry, not Sutala. Sitala. She has written a beautiful rendition of Narottam Vilas. It is so amazing. I mean, it's really glorified the life of Narottam Das Thakur. I got a copy of the manuscript before it was actually published. She gave me a copy. And I started to read it, and it was so nectar that, sometimes when you get a book that is so full of nectar, you don't want to read it all at once because you want to keep it with you for a long time. So I was reading one chapter a day just to somehow relish it and make it last and last, and it was so. So if you get an opportunity, please purchase that book or get a copy of the book. It really takes you deep into the life of Narottam Das Thakur, who was very much a part of our Vaishnava culture in a very big way, especially in our ISKCON society. Many of the songs are done by Narottam Das Thakur. Shri Guru Charana Padma Keval Bhakati Sadma Bando Muhi Sarvadadmate. That's Narottam also. That's Narottam. And Prabhupada loved that particular bhajan. And he also said, the works of Srila Narottam Das, his writings are pure shastric conclusions. The Siddhanta of the Shastras are found in Narottam Das Thakur's writings and in his bhajans. So such a great personality. I really can't do justice to his life so much that we can. So today is a very auspicious day, and devotees can pray to Narottam Das Thakur and receive his special mercy. And of course, he is noted for kirtan. He had revolution. There is a particular name, I have it written here. Yeah, he created a new style of kirtan called Gorana Hati. Gorana, GoranaHati. Gauranahati, that's the name of the style of the kirtan that he introduced into Lord Chaitanya's entourage. And many people say that it is actually the Manipuri style kirtan, like that. Of course, there were many melodies, not just one, like that. So, yeah. Okay, so would anyone like to add anything or say something in relationship to either Prahlad Maharaj or Narottam? Questions? Comments? Jai Satchinandana? Okay, thank you. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.